Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. Right here, I'd like to spend some time to honor our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive. That is their time. 24 hours has been offered to all of us. And Darlene is here to spend some of that expensive stuff with us. And once you laid out that cash, if you will, you can't get it back. And so we want to honor her and thank her for coming and spend some of that expensive stuff with us. The other is the journey. The journey is a creator. It has created her, and it has deposited a couple of things that we want access to. What are those things? Those things are wisdom, understanding, knowledge, insights, all of those things we want access to. Why? Because they're going to assist you and I to become better human spirits while we occupy this place called Earth. Darlene, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken, for inviting me, and Podmatch for nudging me.
Yeah, I thank Alex for that and his team.
Yes.
Welcome. As I said to you, I usually ask this question on the onset. It is a somewhat serious and magical question all in one, I believe. And we talked about our service, our journey, and how it produces two aspects, the independent part of the journey and then the interdependent part of the journey, which is our reward, I believe, as well as getting to know who we are. But how do you serve mankind?
That's a big question, and I participate at my fullest level, and I love it. So it's a win-win for me on many aspects. So how people have come to me in the last, I think I've been doing this a lot longer than what I've given myself credit for. I'm saying 35 years, but I think it's about age. I don't want to put that out there, but it's probably a lot longer than that. And so people will come with a question. They'll come with a concern. They'll come with a health issue. They'll come with, the relationship. I need to understand more about my husband or my partner or my children, or, they come in with an wanting of something is usually. I have some clients that come in and say, tell me what's going on. I'd rather start with a focus because it'll go in many directions. And so when they come in and they ask that, there's an access that I have to their innate wisdom, so their body wisdom, and also their guidance system along with my guidance system. And what I do is I track where is the original cause. So we go back. I trust their body more than anything of where does the body want to go, because I believe it has priorities that, like we need to remove this level first before we get to this one. But what I consciously look for is where is the core issue that started the pattern, the belief, the illness, the whatever. And then help them to see what that's about, because I'm very auditory. I get visual. I'm an artist, so I get a lot of visions that match what's going on. I get messages that way. I tune into what their body's saying or how it feels. So I bring it into my body that way. And then we sort through what needs to be done. Does something need to be rectified or healed or addressed? Or do you need to do some kind of process in order to heal that place back there, to take the energy out of it so that it doesn't influence you here? And when that happens, when you can remove or heal or rectify, when that happens, your perception changes. And when your perception changes here, everything changes here. So you view that person different. You have a better understanding of them. You understand yourself better. Whatever comes up in their session of, and some of it is, if it's physical, let's take a look at what's happening with you. I do not discard anything that the medical profession says. In fact, I will send them to say, let's see what your blood work says. Let's see what all that, so that we have a baseline of where the body is according to the medical profession. And then we go from there, of what needs to be addressed or healed, or is it diet? Is it supplements? Is it maybe an acupuncturist? There's no boundaries with where their body tells me where they want to go.
That is awesome. I love that approach. The body has a good memory. We sometimes don't get it because we are younger when incident happen that you, along with that individual, will investigate to try to find the root of cause analysis as they program and try to teach us in corporate America. Once you discover the root cause, you can develop a root cause analysis, how to handle that particular situation, which is how it is done. If they do it in corporate America, you can surely do it in the natural and in the spiritual realm. And it's the same principles that one applies to obtain the result, the desired outcome. Darling, one of our customs that we do here, as I mentioned to you, we start from the beginning of our beginnings, if you will. And that beginning of our beginnings is in this unit that we call the family. And in that family, usually there's these two couples, mom and dad. Sometimes we have some siblings, but mom and dad and all of us are strangers. We're in this grouping. And from this grouping, we're going to start learning a couple of things. We're going to learn relationship skills. We're going to learn communication skills. We're going to learn a couple of things there. We're going to learn some attitudes. We're going to learn all kinds of things, beliefs. We're going to learn how to develop a couple of things there that will govern our lives as we're moving through. What was your family unit like?
Complicated, diverse. My father was a devout atheist, and my mother was a devout Christian. That
I
was, I
love that
mean, there was a
combination already. Just love it.
and
That's a
she
good
was part
beginning.
Native American. It gets even deeper. She was part Native American in her ancestry, and my father came off the Mayflower. So it was just very, like they should have never been together, but they tried it. So 3 kids
Yeah.
later, then there was a divorce. But what that taught me is my mother was very fierce in her, not just her beliefs and who she was. We used to call her Mighty Mouse, but she's had, her mother tried to kill her twice. So there was all of that, there was all of that energy that she had about that. So it taught me you do what you need to do.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, you just have to do it. You push through it. You don't let fear bother you. You don't let anything, if there's something that needs to be done, you do it. And with my father, it was more, he was a recluse. He had an injury as a child out of 13 children. And so he pulled away and became very much of a recluse. So it was that combination. How do you be in the world? It's the bridge, right? How to be in the world and at the same time take time for yourself, because you weren't allowed to have friends. You weren't allowed to have, you weren't allowed to have that freedom. So how do you juggle both of those? So I think I learned a lot in my childhood. I learned how to not speak up because my dad didn't tolerate that much, but I had the fierceness. I think I got a lot of my mom in me. And my earliest memory is actually in the womb, because I had done some work with this, 10 years of work with this, but I was a twin. And so I lost a twin at like around 3 months, but my mother was never supposed to be pregnant with me. They told her that if she got pregnant, they would do an abortion. And she never told anybody till she was 6 months pregnant. So she spent the last 3 months in the hospital, and there was trauma during birth. And afterwards, she stayed in the hospital for 3 months. So I got raised by my neighbors at that time. So there was a lot of that kind of energy in, like, I wasn't supposed to be here, but I was truly grateful and respectful. And even my mother and I had a business later in the health profession that we had for about 10, 15 years together. And, it's that whole thing, like when you take a look at these threads that come through our life from the time we are conceived, these mile points of these milestones of what happens in our life. And again, usually from trauma, something that brings us into a deeper awareness of who we are or what decisions we need to make. It definitely leads us into what's next and what's next and what's next. And they're all building blocks. That's how I view it. But each step of the way is a building block of who you are, maybe who you have been that you're now awakening to, right? But it's those building blocks that lead us to who we are as a hopefully mature human. We can try that on.
I absolutely believe that. Thus, Threads of Enlightenment. I believe when you have the conversation with yourself and with others, and you begin to talk about your beginnings and your life, you will see this in each one of us. There are threads that started when we were very young. that followed us all the way into adult and has been weaving itself in our being energetically all our lives, and
Right.
has been a deep part of who we are in many ways, of what we have become and what continues to evolve in us. And so, yeah, that's why I love the title Threads of Enlightenment, because it talks and leans towards that process. As you are in the cauldron, Darlene, I mean, you have the polar opposites of belief from mom and dad, and such history with the background of both individuals, strong history within the household being a part of that as well, and the secret that mom held that gave entrance to you into this world of ours, this natural world. And you, of course, would adopt some of mom's energy as you are moving through life, as you're walking through and growing up now, darling. What was your relationship outside of family? How did you begin to develop your communication skills with others outside of family?
Well, because of the religious beliefs that was very steeped in the outside world, was very separate from the religion, right? So it was,
Hmm.
you don't have friends in that area. I socialized at school, but that was about it. It was always, if there was any children in the congregation, that's where we spent most of the time. So that was a lot of fun for me. That was a lot
Yeah.
of, because it was a relief that at least there was somebody there. And there was quite a big group of kids, teenagers that I grew up with. But what started to happen early on, which I think was probably 13 or 14, girls from school would ask me, well, what's happening with this guy? Or, we'd be in a conversation, but the information started to come in that felt like it was more about, well, this is what's happening. This is what you need to do. This is where, I felt more like a teenage therapist with my kid people at school.
Yeah.
Not so much with the people in the religion. I felt like I kept that very safe and separate. In school, that was the fun piece of the socializing in that avenue of being asked, like
Yeah.
invited in to be, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And it was just a lot of fun in
Hmm.
school up to a certain point.
Yeah. That's fascinating that they began to notice, your peers began to notice something about you, that they would come to you specifically. What do you know about this and what do you know about that? As you began to expound to them what you knew about this and what you knew about that, how did that continue? Because usually something like that could also get you in trouble. What happened
Yeah.
to you as you were doing this and that?
Well, my mother overheard me one time speaking to to a friend of mine on the phone,
Yeah.
and when I got off the phone, she said, "You're just an interrogator," because I would ask a lot of questions. And I was like, "Wait a minute, an interrogator? That's not a good thing." But it didn't stop me. I was like, "Okay, well, that's kind of her opinion." Like, I don't believe in right or wrong, good or bad. That was one of the big issues that in the religion, that there was a lot of that. I never
Hmm.
really felt that that was part of what life was supposed to be about. It wasn't about judgment and criticism and watching over somebody to see if they did something wrong. It really just
Yeah.
didn't feel right. But I did lead that. I went through that time period of my mother got really ill again. She's been
Hmm.
ill most of her life, but she went into a health crisis when I was in my senior year, and they gave her 6 months to live. And she lasted another 35, 40 years after that. But the medical profession gave up on her. She was going into comas every 3 months, and she
Wow.
was like the Incredible Hulk. If you rubbed the back of her neck, she would swell up within 30 seconds. She would break out zippers. She would,
Wow.
it was just like watching her was like a sci-fi movie. But the doctors gave up on her and they just sent her home and they said, she's got like 6 months. But she went through a health crisis with a chiropractor that it was 3 years. And I left my high school. I graduated, but they let me go home and take care of her. And that was traumatic because we never knew what she was going to do or how she was going to come out of this, or was she ever going to come out of this. And by that time, I was living with just her and my sister, and we had
Hmm.
left my dad. So that whole trauma time was years long of wanting to see what
Yeah.
happened with her. But it took like 3 years, and she came out of it as actually as a healer.
Wow. Talk to me about that time because being a caregiver is also very taxing on the caregiver. How did you make it out?
Well, I think I took her part of you just do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So she had a dear friend that actually ended up being my mother-in-law at some point, and they ended up going in business together after the healing crisis. But she would take her to the chiropractor 3 times a week, and that would keep her somewhat stable in her
Hmm.
physical body while she was going through. I mean, she was taking 350 pills a day, 3
Wow.
coffee enemas a day.
Wow.
And she first year, she was on nothing but juices, nothing but juices. The second year was nothing but homemade yogurt, nothing else in it. And the third year, she became vegetarian. But I look at that and what I know today, and I know the trauma that she had in childhood, and I look at that as how it represented in her body. You know,
Hmm.
it just, if you take a look at all her symptoms, in some way, they represented those threads of what she
Yeah.
brought in through her trauma, through her childhood, through being poisoned as a kid, all of that. She brought that in. And so the physical body at that age, which she was what, 30 something, 40, brought it through the body in a
Bring
way
out.
that
Yeah.
she could have died, but she
Yeah.
chose to live.
Yeah. I have heard this thread so many times where the trauma being suppressed by the young individual, survival mode causes them to do that. And usually in their uh, late 20s and 30s, that their body just all of a sudden decided not to manifest all of it all at the same time. And in women, they found that it, it's usually in some kind of a immune disease or something like that.
Hmm.
It'll show up as fibromyalgia, all those type things like that. Is they're now finding. I cannot tell you, Darlene, how many women I've interviewed that trauma when they were younger later manifested as that. At some point, they
Right.
were fine, and then all of a sudden, bam! And it took them years to walk through it. And then they did walk through and realized that it led right back to the trauma. Led them all back to the trauma. Once they discovered that, which is what a part of your healing modality is all about, once they discovered that, the principle is, and you shall know the truth, and the truth is going to set you free. And when they know the truth, they are free from that this ease, and they're able to
Hmm.
then move forward in their progression and in their growth. Here is this young girl, caregiver for 3 years or so, watch mom for so many years, dealing with her trauma. Did you, after that time and mom's recovery, did you pursue
Hmm.
school after that? What was your direction in your life when you assisted work with mom to bring her to the place after mom had declared that, no, I'm not going down this way? But you got a chance to witness that battle with mom. And what was your direction after that?
Well, that's an important question because we were not instructed, we were not given permission in the religion to further your schooling.
Hmm.
So I graduated. My sister was valedictorian. She was 5.5 years older than me, and she got a really good job and all of that. So it was more about, you be a secretary, which that's
Hmm.
what I thought that was going to happen. But I was really afraid of the world. Like there was a part of me that wanted to be out there because my
Hmm.
invisibility issue that started from, in the utero, in the womb, led me through most of my life of needing to be invisible, feeling like that was a safe place. And at the same time, wanting to break through that. And towards her end of her healing crisis, I got married.
Hmm.
Thinking that that was going to change my life, and I'd be a good girl. I
Yeah.
would be a good girl and I would get married, and that's what you do. And then I would do whatever, but I at least had the security of something, right? And then I could do
Hmm.
whatever I wanted to do past that, but I had the security. And that lasted about 4 years. And when she came out of the healing crisis and she went for her massage certificate, it was really, I think I was 21 by that time. And she was making $15 an hour and I was making 4 at a local store. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I think 15 sounds a lot better. So I went and got the massage certificate. And because it was in Pennsylvania, there was no law about that. There was no schooling for it at that
Yeah.
time. I proceeded to tell her because she had a thriving business by that time. Like she was just, people were coming to her. And I was like, I don't want to work on men. I don't want to work on
Yeah.
anybody that's hairy. I don't want to work on anybody that is over 120 pounds. And so she was like, uh-huh. And she sent me everybody but. And within about 6 weeks, I fell in love with the human body. Like she, in her
Yeah.
wisdom, it was like once my hands were on it and I could start to feel something, and I didn't even know what that something was, but it was that aliveness, it's that energy, it's that will, it's that desire to live, right?
Yeah.
The body wants to live. And
Yeah.
it just led me in that whole path of I wanted more. I wanted to more. What makes humans tick? What
Yeah.
do they have in their brain? Where's the emotional level? What all of that. It just led me in that direction.
And being led in that direction, because that is, I love that as one begins to, this is my belief I'm getting older, I'm learning to a couple of things, because I don't believe the soul of the man, that subconscious mind, I don't think he is interested in a job at all. And I tell people, I don't think we came here for a job. I think we came here with an assignment, and we need to be diligent and learn to find and be quiet enough and to seek that assignment, whatever it is. And as we begin to get glimpse of it, as you, Darlene, you get wisdom as you're touching these bodies and getting some glimpse that there is more that I need and I want to learn and be a part of, because it's bigger than you. As you are doing that, and the unspoken language is getting louder and louder inside of you, that this is the direction I want you to go. What did you begin to do?
Well, I took every course that I could. Theology was because that was the foundation of the chiropractor that helped my mother. So I wanted to know what that was about. So I traveled around trying to figure out, was there a college of kinesiology? And I found out there was, but it wasn't what I was looking for. It was more about the range of motion and muscle testing. And I worked for a chiropractor for a few years. So I did that, but that wasn't the joy of it.
Yeah.
But I learned applied kinesiology, and that took me into the whole other realm of how does your emotions affect your physicality and your disease and your illness, and the emotional level behind that and the tracking. It kind of led me into that. Nutrition was always of an interest to me because people would come in and I'd wanted to learn about herbs. So I did courses on herbs and nutrition and became a nutritionist, a certified nutritionist. And then couples came in with their issues. So I went and took classes. I wiggled my way in to be because I'm not a therapist, but I wiggled my way in to join the Imago group, the Imago therapy group, and got all their training, even though I didn't have a certification on it. They gave me a plaque of attendance, but I got so much from that, about the communication skills and the history, because the Imago therapy goes back to what happened in your childhood, that you married somebody, or you were attracted to somebody that is very similar to one of your parents or your caretakers or your teachers or whatever that is, where the wounded was, right? Where the woundedness is. So again, it matched everything. And every time that somebody needed something, I wanted to find out more. So that was my schooling, of what more could there be? And eventually I ended in I found like a plateau that I had gathered enough of these pieces to help individuals. But there's still more out there. I mean, I've done some things in the last 30 years, last 20 years.
Yeah, there's always more. I think there's a library out there that has been collecting things and written before time. There's the physical library that is here on the earth. And then there's another library, Darlene, that you have access to that is not here on this earth, that I'm sure you have visited a couple of times and had conversation with those librarians that gave you access to information, and then you were able to come onto this earth and then go back and try those things, and they work perfectly. So there are several libraries that we have access to to get and gather information. As you, I mean, I love your practicalness of how you got your data. You were in the trenches, if you will, getting your data. Because there's always the theory part. Because when I studied electrical engineering, you have your theory, and then they would throw us in the lab to then work out these theories that we would learn in the books. And you were there within the lab and the theory working. The people would come up and they would give you the theories, and then you would go get the lab and come out and be in the mix of this thing. That is such a beautiful, beautiful piece that you had a chance to experience, man. That's powerful stuff. You plateaued. Talk to me as you're learning all of these things. You talked about the body first. Let's track through some of these things and modalities that you have been learning. First, the body. You talked about the body. Walk with us first with encounters as the body as you are initiating your massage and you're learning your skill set there. What did you learn there as you began to fall in love with the body and dealing and manipulating energy as you're doing your massage and stuff like that? What did you learn at that space right there?
So that was very fascinating to be able to put hands on, like, to drain the gallbladder.
Hmm.
I mean, even for a period of time, I was doing colonics we had a 3-story old barn, and that was our therapy center where we did classes and we brought in people. But what I learned from the body is that it does have a mind of its own. And when I was introduced to Ho'oponopono, the I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you, it really became an eye opener because what happens sometimes in trauma or exceedingly trauma, like a lot of different parts of your life, accidents or, surgeries or abuse or anything that the body really felt it in some way invasive, that the body starts to move away from our consciousness. It starts to move
Yeah.
away from what we decide, and it can become a bit rebellious. So that
Yeah.
somebody comes in and they're taking supplements, but they can hardly take any supplements because their body's rebelling and not digesting them well, or it doesn't even want it. So that Ho'opono, what I would tell them is to, go back to those specific situations that were invasive, whatever they were, and do the Ho'opono with that age of your body, because the body, what I see with the body is it really wants to heal. It doesn't want to be rebellious. It doesn't want to hold on to these issues. It wants to heal. And so when you give it permission and you find the doors and the avenues and the tools to help it heal, it lines pretty well up. It just kind of, okay, I get it, and moves in, so that in present day, when you've done that with the body trauma, you have more of a opportunity to heal in present day from whatever you're dealing with.
Yeah, just you can look at the cut on your hand and you can see that perfectly in the body is and the blood and everything is at attention to
Hmm.
bring healing to that at a micro level. The white blood cells and everybody is at work to make sure
Yep.
infection and all those things are not there. And so, yeah, the body is self-preservation. Everything wants to live. So I tell people you have the natural mind, you have the mind of the body, and then you got yourself this subconscious mind that's sitting over there that you need to have a conversation with, because that's who you are. And he's waiting for his turn so that he can help you and bring deepness to all of the mess that you find yourself in, because he has access to that library we're talking about, Darlene, that they don't know anything about. That he has that volumes there that he can go to and get you and give you answers that you never thought you were even capable of having. So that's how you dealt with the body. So now let's talk about, you had mentioned the couples and so forth. Let's talk about that. When first, let's back up a little. When someone comes up to you and say, hey, I don't even know what I want, but I want to help me out. I don't know what's going on, but come on, give me something. I'm picking these, darling, because I want those that are listening to us start to formulate in their thoughts some of the things that you do, all the different modalities that you do, and how you approach them, and what an expectation they would have once they come before you as you are dealing with all these different issues, as we are walking into your skill set, your services and stuff like that that you're doing. So I want them to get a chance to taste some of it as we're walking in.
Okay. So I rarely do hands-on. When I moved, my clientele went with me, but not with seeing them in person. And so I usually work on the phone, and the phone is the easiest thing for me because I am not dealing with their energy field in front of me, So that for
Yeah.
me is how I work. Not even Zoom. A lot of times I will just do the phone because it's most comfortable for me, and it's no different than being in person or not. But what I offer people, so they can come in with any questions, and it's usually in an hour, we cover most everything, if not everything that they want to cover about their questions that they have either written down or in their head, because it goes in all the different directions. How does your health affect your relationship? How does it, what happened in this area in your life? How does that affect your children? What are you doing with your children that you learned from your family that may not even be yours? Like you
Mhm.
didn't come in with that. That's a learned behavior. Are you addressing that? So it's a catalyst to bring all that together for them. And some of the times what happens is past lives come up because your belief system has to support that. So ancestral trauma or past life trauma, that's also could be part of their core reason of what's happening today. But I can tell you that in the work that I do, if you don't have a past life belief system, your body won't go back there because it doesn't match, right? So
Yeah.
people don't need to be concerned about, oh, I don't believe in past lives and that's what she does. I don't. If it's there, it's there. And if it's not, it's not. It's because you either believe it or you don't. So they come forward to basically get a groundedness of what they're dealing with, steps forward, tools that they need to do. And this isn't like a weekly thing. I mean, they have to move through so much that sometimes people don't call me for a few months, and that's fine. I
Yeah.
usually leave it with, when you're ready, you'll know. And then we make that, then they call me and I put them in. But it's that place of like nooks and crannies. Like I'm very much into structure and very much into thoroughness and very much into detail. And so I want to get all the little pieces of whatever is creating that issue for them so that they have a really deep understanding of how they got there. It's not just one thing, it's the many things that create you to be in this spot that you're in right now. And all the tools and the avenues and whatever you need to do to heal that or bring it forward. And a lot of times it's not always healing, it's the gifts. Like
Mhm.
what gift can you bring forward? Where is your mission in this lifetime or your purpose? They may be very different. And sometimes what I'm finding with people more recently is they're reaching their end of their mission or their purpose, and then they
Mhm.
have real freedom. If you don't necessarily have to learn anything more or whatever, not that you're totally free with nothing's going to happen in your life and you have bliss, but you've reached a point that now you can create something even
Yeah.
different. Now you can think ahead. Now you can seed the field. Now you can go to that library, and find out more of what's possible for you.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to show humans, help show people that they are fully capable of much more. My slogan is, you know more than you know, because you do. You just
Yeah.
don't know you know it.
Yeah, they haven't been afforded the time to get an opportunity to know that they know. I know in some
Yeah.
of your therapy and stuff like that, in your questioning, and I said the reason why someone questions and levels questions to you is that they're trying to locate where you're at. And some of the response that you'll get once you level a question to them, they're like, I didn't even know that I can ask that. I didn't even
Right.
know that I could. And so because, they're busy living their life. They're busy with their children. They're busy with their profession, their jobs. They're busy with everything else but themselves and not really taking the time to ask those questions. Darlene, I used
Hmm.
to, every year, my birthday, I remember I would sit down, I would take myself out to dinner, and I would have prepared a list of questions and really serious questions that I would have to answer at that table. When I was having my dinner, I picked a restaurant that I'm going to sit down, and I know that this is my ritual. And so I remember a couple of years just being nervous because I know I had to answer myself. And you got to be honest. I
Uh-huh.
can't lie to myself because I'm going to know. And when I messed up, I would say, I did this and this is the reason why. And I had to, quote unquote, take responsibility for what I did not do and what I said I'd done and that I would do, and take responsibility. And then, okay, what are you going to do, and so forth. And so each year I held an accountability meeting, if you will, um, to with myself, and it helped me grow. And so some people never get a chance unless they come before you and have that accountability meeting because they're so busy, because they've been living that program that tells them this is what you do, and you plug into the job, you plug out, you got the kids and so forth. So that is wonderful stuff that you do. So I want to circle back a little, Darlene, and get back to you a little as to your personal growth, because you were learning a lot about the body and learning stuff about people, but you got to learn about you in the mix of all of that. And from the trauma that you suffered as a individual in the womb all the way out, you sat with mom for 3.5 years close to. That is traumatic on a young individual, dealing with that all day long, looking at it. How was your journey getting to a place where you are going to now learn how to love this woman, Darlene, this healer, this intuitive individual? How did you walk that walk and learn how to accept and love and respect you?
I think the hardest thing, and still working on it, is forgiveness.
Yeah.
The choices that we make, the choices that I've made that felt like they hurt someone else, in whatever way, whether that's my children or relationships or anything, there's something that I hold now, being more aware of what that was and forgiving yourself for it and doing the best that you thought that you were doing for what you needed. Because it was always about survival for me for a very long time. And
Yeah.
because of the being raised very religious, and when I left that religion, there was that guilt and shame for
Guilt.
such a
Yeah.
long time, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that I couldn't even use the word God. I couldn't.
Yeah.
It felt so like I was so ashamed in whatever way that was, that I couldn't use that word. And that was a big growth of mine. It was like 10 years, and there was a lot of rage at God that I had to
Yeah.
go through, not because of the religion, but because of my womb experience and feeling like, because my mother's body was very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
So my experience was, not only did I lose a sister, but I lost the connection to her because I couldn't
Yeah.
hear her. The toxicity kept me from hearing her heartbeat. And I thought I had to put my body together. Like, my impression was I had to do this. I had to put it together. Moving was not an option, because the more I moved, the more the toxicity affected me. So I was very still. It felt like I had to be very still and very awake and aware and try to put this body together. And the rage at God for not giving me a book to do this,
Hmm.
it's like, like I don't have a manual of how to do
Yeah.
this, but that's what it felt like, that
Yeah.
rage of, how could you just leave me here? But I do think that it's, in some part, a lot of people's rage, not because of their womb experience, but coming in and then finding out that you forget, or coming in and finding out that it's much harder than you think that it was going to be, or your plans are not the same as what you thought they were going to be. Yeah, there was those huge components of my life of getting through to the place to forgive and to allow and to reconnect to spirit in a very different way, and to not blame and shame anybody about who they have been or how I got to where I was.
Yeah.
It's nobody's
I
fault
know.
at all.
Yeah.
It's choice.
It's choices. And I have this saying that I tell people: life is a series of choices. And the beauty of a choice is that all that remain after you have made the choice is the consequences, or good or bad. And
Mhm.
that's it. And we have to learn to adapt. I came out of something with a religious situation as well, and I remember I had a shame. And to those that are not a part of the church, and those that are a part of the church, and when we talk about the shame and the weight of shame and what it does to you, it's a tremendous burden. But I'm going to tell you guys to give you some advice. I don't think God even wants you to carry that. I think we carry that. We just have to offer that to him. Give it to him, man. Give it to him. Say, I don't want this thing, and I'm sure he'll take it. And so just don't carry it because it's not necessary. You wasn't designed to carry shame. And once you release it, I'm telling you, you will feel as if you are flying. Guilt and shame is two of the most heavy things to carry as a human being, to have in your suitcases, as they say. Just let it go. I remember when I had my opportunity, I invited them to dinner, actually. I cooked a wonderful meal and I invited them to dinner, and I had a conversation with them, and I thanked them for walking with me until now. And then I told them, I said, thank you. And I do not need your assistance anymore. And I've never, ever had any of that stuff again since I verbally released them, and I thanked them for their time. And I told them they taught me much. I learned much. And I thank you so much for all the lessons that you've given to me. And, that was it. We parted ways. But I'm telling you guys, you don't need to carry that at all. And Darlene testified about talking about hers. And so it weighs you down, and it will always stunt your growth. So just let it go and become a new person in your spirit, in your mind, and in your body, and all that you are. Receive your peace and move on. So here you are, Darlene. You talk to me now. How did you walk into your own now? When you walk into yours, I know you worked with mom for a while, and then you stepped out. How did stepping out on your own? How did it feel? How did it come about?
Well, we were in a business together in Pennsylvania for, like I said, 10, 12, 15, I lost track, but let's say around that time. And when I turned 40, I got a message from my guidance system that said, you're moving. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And they're like, yes, you are. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And I went around 3 days because we had this thriving practice. I mean, like it was, and I was raising 3 kids by myself. So it was like, no, I can't. Where do you think I'm moving? Where am I moving to? And on the 3rd day, and my mother is very psychic, even though she wasn't allowed to be. She came up to me and said, I think we need to move. And I'm like, oh no, like this is real. And that was part of being on my own. Actually I live where they told me to move. I'm still there.
Yeah.
And what happened with that is it was on my own because it was like starting all over, even though I may have traveled back to Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I went to New York City for a while, and I had satellite places that I worked out of. But this was my anchor. This was my home. I had an agreement with her. I think probably because of how she brought me in and she wasn't supposed to, and the gratitude for that I wasn't going to surpass her in this lifetime. And what that meant to me is that I wasn't going to do anything that was going to really harm her or push her out or feel like I was better than, or moved even in a different direction, that was very different than her belief system. I did that up until the day that she passed. And I knew about 3 months before, I remember coming out because she lived with me. She had an apartment downstairs from the house that I'm in now. And when I came out of the door, I leaned on the washer and dryer crying and saying, I'm ready to let her go. And she passed within a few months from that. But I was in the hospital with her, and my whole life was about what would I be and what would I do when she's not here?
And she's there.
Like what was I going to be? And that's what happened when she took her last breath. Like all the walls fell down. Like I closed my eyes, and all I could picture that I was in a desert alone. There was nothing around me, and I had both freedom and I had grief. And that whole identity was like, how do I pick up the pieces from there? Yeah. But you talk about going to the library, you talk about those things that are in the invisible realm, really held me together and brought everything else forward. So that the woman that I am today really functions by being in those places without the belief of the hindrance that it was more of the contract that I had with my mother, and I wasn't going to circumvent that. I wasn't going to push against that. That felt so vital to my survival here and my spiritual self that when it was my turn, it was like starting from scratch in a lot of ways. But I got so much spiritual support with that. It was really heartwarming.
One exercise, Darlene, that I remember I remember reading this in something I read where Japanese, what they would do is one of the exercises that they would do is meditate and see themselves as if they're dead, and to allow that picture to be a part of their mind and their subconscious mind and stuff. And I started to do that in my life. And one day I was going through some stuff, and someone said something to me and initiated another practice. Who are you, Ken? Who are you without your sons and everyone else? And it hit me like a sledgehammer because my identity was with my sons. I was a single dad, and I was like, wait a minute, you know. And I remember just began to entertain that. Who am I without anyone? So I went in, and it took me years to really, truly get a baseline, Darlene, where I can live in peace with the fact that I am apart from them. I am with them, but I am apart from them. And so if anything happens, I still have to live. I had to do that with my parents and everything. It was amazing practice. And it has helped me hold it together because I've learned how to see myself as such and put that practice together in my being so that when it does happen, that I have been practicing and made myself aware way before the incident has ever happened so that I am not sidestepping or just knocked out and totally lost it because yeah, it could be traumatic, especially when you have someone as close as you with your mother. From the beginning, she held you as a secret, and so that you can have your time here on this planet. So, everyone that has been listening to this beautiful story with Darlene and I and her passion for what she does, we will provide all her links so that you can have your one-on-one with her on the phone. You can be a part of the Cosmic Traveler Creator Program and the community, the podcast, all the things that she does. We're going to give you all of that, man, so that you can get into her world because you need to. We don't want, and I know Darlene doesn't want you to be in pain and be in those dark spaces. She was in those dark spaces, and she has a flashlight. And she knows some areas that you don't know any about, those dark spaces. She tells us that she knows those little cracks and crannies because she is detailed. And she had to do that with her life because she is her first client. And she promised that she would do that to you because she's familiar with what it takes to be detailed because she had to do that with herself. She has visited those libraries that we talked about. And it's important because in that library is an expanse of knowledge that sits there. And you need to be in the space of someone that has access to those libraries, be able to bring some light into your dark space. And her name is Darlene, and we're going to give you all of her information so that you can have that light in your dark place. Darlene, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken, for having me. It's been an enlightening conversation.
Thank you so much. It has been a really beautiful.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully, you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.